Okay. Welcome to Autism Lifeline Links. This is our Across the Spectrum series. We had been doing them live on Facebook, but of course in this age of COVID and isolation, we are taping them and then posting them to our Facebook page. So we do hope that you enjoy this, this episode. And we are live, we're filming today with our friends. And what I'm going to do is introduce everybody as we go through. And then we are going to talk today about long-term services and supports and what we're traditionally called Medicaid waivers, and something that we are working on at Autism Lifeline Links with all of our community partners is to try to help change the vernacular about how we refer to these services, the supports, and then also talk to you less from a clinical lens. We want to give you the good information, but then we really want to hear from some advocates and some parents to tell you why this is really important. And then also what your responsibilities are, not only to get on the list, but then how do you make sure that you are maintained on that list and that your contact information remains accurate and relevant so that when your name comes up, then you are reachable so that we can make sure that those services get to you. So we're calling this waiver know-how, what parents and self-advocates should know their responsibilities are on enrolling to the long-term services and supports, or LTSS waiver and interest list. So today we have with us Miss Corina from AACOG. You want to give us a wave? And she is the community engagement manager, and she's going to speak from the subject matter expert lens on how COG manages these lists and why they're important and some of the steps that happen with that. And then we have Michelle, and Michelle is a special ed parent liaison at Alamo Heights ISD, and she's also the mom of a kiddo on the spectrum. And then we have Marisol, who is the special education advocate at Brighton Center. So she does this all the time, and she does trainings and classes, and they have great programs there for that. And she is with Brighton Center, and she's also a mom of a guy on the spectrum. So we want to thank everybody for taking time to be here with us today. So I'm going to just let you each take a moment, tell us a little more about you and why you think it's really important for families to get on these long-term services support program waiver interest list. And so that's what it is. You have to get on an interest list, and the interest list, we'll be very honest, are anywhere from 9 to 15 years long. And that is an awful long time to wait for something. But what it does is really should hopefully reinforce why it's very important you get on at a very young age instead of waiting until your child is a young adult or working through the transition process in their special ed program. So let's start with you, Marisol.
Well, I am a parent of a 20-year-old, child, young adult. My son's name is Ricardo, as he's pretty famous in all of our trainings and classes. I talk about him most of the time. He's kind of my teacher. And yes, he is on the spectrum, and we originally placed him on the Medicaid waiver program back when he was 5 years old. He had received services through ECI and had started his back then known PPCD program, his preschool program for children with disabilities. And the school didn't give me any of this information. So I found out through outside resources. One being Brighton, they had the PALS program back then, and just looking and researching and pretty much collaborating with other families and other parents. And that's how I was getting my information. It wasn't an agency who let me know that this was available for him. Yet I was a young mom, and there was a lot of services and a lot of documentation and paperwork that happened in order for us to get on that Medicaid waiver program. So it was a bit overwhelming, not only because of the length of the documentation, but also, when your child is very young, we don't know what we are pretty much going to see. He didn't have an official diagnosis back then. He didn't have specific needs. His needs have changed over time. So I didn't know, what was I signing up for? What did that mean? And how was I going from actually putting him on the list? But there was a unique person who always mentioned, if there's anything that you need to do is have him on that Medicaid waiver program. It doesn't matter if you understand it now. It doesn't matter what that's going to look like. You don't have to have a diagnosis. You don't have to know exactly what he's going to need. Just keep up every year with that contact information. As time goes on, it'll start making sense.
Isn't that great though? Because it is that whole like, okay, I know this sounds crazy, but do it. Just get on this list. And so having somebody that you trust say it, and that's one of the things we talk about is that if you're saying it when you're getting, services in childcare, right, at Brighton or respite care, or if you're getting case management over at Any Baby Can or the ARC, and then hopefully somebody is saying that at school, and then you sign up for other stuff at AACOG. Like the more time somebody hears it, then hopefully they will know that, oh, okay, if I'm hearing this, because if it's like if you hear it once, you're like, okay, but if you hear it multiple times from trusted people and advocates for your child or for at least kids with disabilities, then hopefully it'll resonate. And what about you, Michelle?
Pretty similar. We actually, I think our timeline was slowed down even more because not only did we not have a diagnosis early on, we were actually told, oh, you don't need to worry about the big A word. He's just got ADHD. So we wasted about 2 years before we had a diagnosis. And we've been in San Antonio almost 7 years. So the district we were in Austin or outside of Austin, it was similar. It was affluent, and no one in that area knew anything about, Medicaid waiver programs. No one in the school district or ECI mentioned those things to me when Wyatt first started speech therapy. And that's what we were going on. He had a severe speech delay. So we started with speech therapy, and then it was significant enough that he did 5 day a week, half day speech through PPCD in our school district there. And it took us moving here to San Antonio. And within those first 3-4 months of being here, Heather Long at the ARC contacted me, and I remember she came over and sat with me and walked me through all of this. And I was like, we don't, it sounded, I don't know the right word.
Snobbish, right? Yeah.
It did.
Like,
I was like,
right.
Well, it was more like my husband makes too much money. We'll never qualify for something like that. Like, no one's going to give us money because, my husband makes too much. And she said, that's not how it works. And same thing that Marisol said, you don't quite understand it. And it's kind of like, I laugh now. It's like, I don't need to know the way electricity works to use it. Yeah. So it was the same sort of thing. Like, just do it.
Just get on it. And so And so that's that piece of it where it's so difficult. And you two just brought up something that's really interesting, which I totally didn't even think about, was especially with guys on the spectrum, right? You're getting ECI, you're getting some other service. There's clearly an identified issue, but then you don't have a solid diagnosis, or the diagnosis is shifting and changing, or, all the things that happen with autism diagnosis, what we call it anyway. So it's a double message to say, okay, listen, I know you don't know what it is, but here's the facts. You can still get on this list. Get on this list, because it will be, unfortunately, years before your name comes up. And then when your name comes up, then there'll be additional verification of that disability. So worry about it later, right? And so Corina, can you speak to, I'm sorry, Michelle, so Corina, can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah.
Why, like, that part of it, what people don't get?
What I'm hearing from y'all is something that we hear from parents all the time. We don't have a diagnosis, or it's just speech, or we really don't know what's going on. And we tell everyone it's okay. You don't need a proven diagnosis to go on the list. You just have to suspect that there's something there. And so you're on a list. So what? It doesn't waste your time, because you're not having to do anything but make that one phone call. We fill out some paperwork, and then that's it. You're on a list. We'll follow up with you in a couple of years, every couple of years, but we can be on the back burner. You did the most important step by getting on it, and then you're not wasting any time. If you ever get a diagnosis down the road, great. We're going to need that when we offer services, but if you don't, then okay, you're just on the list. Doesn't hurt to get on that list. And a lot of times we'll hear the same thing as well, we don't really need that. You know, we make enough money, we have the means to take care of our child, or even when we're not around, you know, his brother or sister's going to take care of him. But families need that support. They don't realize that down the road that things will progress and you're going to need that support as an adult, because that sibling's going to be married and they're going to have jobs and they have lives to live themselves, and they're going to need that support to help take care of that sibling. So what y'all are saying is a lot of what all families tell us, and we still just drive home, get on the list, doesn't matter, doesn't hurt, get on the list, because you are waiting 9 to 15 years.
Right. And so it is a long time. And that's something, by the way, that, you know, one other thing that we've been saying in this is that, you know, who didn't, you know, I didn't hear about it from school until, or I didn't hear about it from ECI. So some of the things that our project at Autism Lifeline Links, just to remind everybody out there in the world, is that it's a collective impact project, which is just a big word for, we bring everybody together that's touching the autism and developmental disability space and try to say, what are some key issues that go across this whole industry that we think we can improve? And then we collectively make those decisions. But what we then do is say, okay, well, we want to improve it, but what's wrong with it? Why is it broken? And really digging into it, because what we found in this past year, because we've been digging into waiver issues or long-term services and support issues for, I've been there for 3 years. It's only been up for 3.5. And that, you know, the biggest issue is that so often the misunderstanding, even among us as professionals, which is, well, it's the school's responsibility. Well, no, it's ECI's. Well, no, it's a caseworker's. No, and you get a lot of this, and none of it is in malice, but what that does is create a lot of miscommunication and a lot of siloing and gross misunderstanding for us as practitioners, never mind for parents, right? So one of the big things we've been digging in deep on is, actually, it is no one's mandate. It is not mandated, not in school standards, not in ECI standards, not in medical standards. It is, no one has the actual responsibility to say, you need to get on this list, kind of like you need a social security card, or you need insurance, or you need to go to school, you need to register. It's no one's responsibility, air quote, you know, no one's responsibility. But therefore, okay, good. Now at least we know. So we've educated ourselves to say, everybody stop pointing fingers. Now what can we do? So we're looking at legislative, trying to create some no cost or low cost relationships, or even legislative items to say, especially when kids are leaving ECI, you're right. You may not know if that kiddo has autism or not, but if they're discharging from ECI and they still have speech language issues, ECI is mandated to send information to school to say, this kid's coming down the pike. Why can't we make it a mandate to do that? So just know that that's the kind of thing that Autism Lifeline Links does, because Brighton is super busy and the school districts are super busy and AACOG's busy and all of our electronic referral partners are busy. So all says, all right, we're taking the best of everyone's brains and passion and let's see what we can change. So I want to share my screen and we're going to dig in just for like a high level about what the waivers are, because we're talking about them. And I purposely wanted to like make us tell our stories and our passion for this, and then just talk a little bit about them, because what we've even learned in the past few months of digging in on this is, when you say a Medicaid waiver, which is why we're trying to change the vernacular, it means something different in a physician's office. A Medicaid waiver is one thing in a physician's office. We just learned a Medicaid waiver is a different thing in an ARD for a special ed kid. It's actually helping the family sign up for medical services and insurance. And it means something absolutely different in the occupational, speech, and physical therapy worlds. So what is it? Like, why? And so if I don't know what it is, why would I even think that it's important, other than somebody who cares about me and my kid said that it is? So I'm just going to share this with you real quick. So this is, can you guys see that?
Yes.
Okay, so this is a standard. We're going to put this up with this post, and this is what those waivers are. And so what's important to know on the high level is that these cover lots of different things that waivers were designed so that people with long-term disabilities are able to live in communities where they reside, rather than living in institutional care, period, right? So that we're trying to avoid people living in nursing homes and state schools and state hospitals are having to go into the foster care system. That's what these waivers do. So they provide myriad things from, nursing care to psychological care, social work, residential dayhab, respite care, mobility, specialized equipment, adaptive aids, everything from computers to all that kind of stuff. So these are all the things that check each of them does. But there's 5 different waivers. There's the HCS, which is Home and Community Support, Texas Home Living, which TXHML, you'll hear. And those 2 are managed out of the LIDAs, or the local intellectual developmental disability authorities across the state. So our local LIDA is Corina here, which is AACOG. And so I want Corina to talk a little bit about like what that means. How does somebody get on this with them? And then we'll cover the other guys in a sec.
Yeah, so the easiest way to get on the waiver interest list is to give us a call. We've tried to build a no wrong door approach so that any number you call to AACOG, all you have to say are the 10 simple words of, I want to get my child on the interest list. And we all know what that means, and we will direct you to the right one. But one of the numbers you can call is on the screen, 210-832-50474, and that'll get you directly to the person who adds Olive County to the interest list. So you say that. You say, I want to get my child on the interest list. And this person will speak with you over the phone and go over a questionnaire, what we call a questionnaire. We're asking you demographic questions, questions about diagnosis and abilities. But again, if there's no diagnosis and you're unsure of those answers, that's okay. Really, all we care about is getting demographics, name, phone number, address. And so we get all that information. We explain to you what each of the services are that are offered through the waivers. We tell you about the approximate wait times. And then we really, 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 really let you know that it is important to keep us updated with your name and phone number, because we will be following up with you every 2 years. So lots of times people forget about us, that they even got on a list or what these waivers are, because when we call 2 years later, they're like, what? So we have to go through the whole process again of explaining what the waiver is. And yes, you signed up for this back on this date. You're still on it. This is your number on the list. Is everything fine? And we just kind of remind you of what those services are. And then again, in 2 years, we'll follow up with you and let you know you're still on this list. We haven't forgotten about you. And that's when we tell you your position on the list. And you are also welcome to call anytime you want. We have people that call every week. Where am I at on the list? And that's okay. That's okay. We will let you know. It doesn't move that much, but we will tell you where you're at on the list. But we would definitely be calling you. So if you don't hear from us, then call us and let us know what's going on. And we will also send you out a packet after we've talked to you. We'll send you a letter and a confirmation packet to let you know when you went on the list, your place on the list, and then just a reminder of the explanation of services.
So thank you for that. And it's so important too, because you forget, right? I mean, you forget about all the things that you forget about. So tell me a little bit about how you, in your role with families and your organization, right, at Brighton Center, you guys have your amazing program, which teaches the rights and responsibilities, and have a non-adversarial but a building relationship role with the school districts, and helping families understand their rights for school. But then you guys also have childcare, and you're also one of the 3 ECI providers. So can you tell us a little bit about what Brighton Center and your team does to make sure you're educating and advocating for people to get on this list, and then most especially trying to help remind them? Because if you don't say you move, right, and your phone number changes or your email address changes, well, they don't do email, but I mean, like, your phone number changes, and you don't call the COG and let them know, and they can't find you, that's that. And so I've clarified, and Jacob Lozinski, who is the head of the IDD division there at COG, and I have been really digging in on some of this process stuff. And so what happens technically is you're not removed from the list, you're just inactive. Mm-hmm. But and then they'll try that last number they had for you at year 2 again, but at that point it's probably 4 years old and it's not right. So tell me, how do you guys try to tell people, like, if you're moving, if you change your number, you've got to call. Can you tell me a little about what you guys do?
Yes, definitely. So at Brighton's, our department is, special education support services. And although we are not case managers and we don't, we're not giving every family every single resource, that is going to be needed specifically for their family, we do the minimum, not only because, we are advocates, but important to just share. If your child has a suspicion, we sign them up for the Autism Lifeline links. If there's any resource, we collaborate with any way we can. We collaborate with, different agencies to make sure that we're giving them something and not just saying we don't know. But most importantly, knowing that all the children that go through Brighton have that information, have access to knowing. And yes, we do a lot of reminders. It's very helpful that I've been through this process, so I'm able to share and kind of familiarize, with the families and have something in common and saying, I didn't know what it was. Don't worry about it, because parents, they do feel like, well, we don't need it right now. Well, he doesn't have a diagnosis, or he'll grow out of it. He may not need so. And what we constantly say is, I didn't know what it was. I did have no idea what I was signing up for. I just knew that my son was eligible for services, or could be eligible for services at some point that he would benefit from. So every day we are fighting for services.
Yeah.
At the schools, transition happens when they are 13 years old. If we are, talking about a list that is 10, 15 years, that means that they've already been out of school. And now what happens with that gap in them being able to be active members of the community? They're not, they're at home, or they have programs, especially when we talk about our most medical fragile children, or our most lower functioning kiddos in the spectrum, like my son. So that means that when he graduates, what's going to happen? Do I have to stop working? Do I have to, do we have to figure something else because of behaviors or safety? We don't know that. So yes, I do have other children, but it's not their responsibility. And not only that, it's more about, what are Ricardo's rights? How can I make him the most independent without everybody else? So, well, he can't go right now because, well, it doesn't fit our schedule. Well, right. Ricardo has his own schedule of what's best for him. Ricardo has his own schedule about how he accesses the community on his terms, and how long he wants to stay out, and what he needs to do and what not. So these services help us provide that for him. If he wants, if he's expecting and wants to go to the park, then, I'm at work and everybody else is doing their own thing, homework, and, he has the ability to have someone provide services for him and take him and supervise him and make sure that he is doing what he has been shown. He worked for it. Maybe he worked for a leisure time, or for a break, or for a walk. So giving him that control over his environment at some points. So he, we put him when he was 5. He didn't start receiving services until he was 14 or so. And one of the things that I remember the most is that when he was around 9 or 10 years old, his number came up in one of the waiver programs. And it was a very quick phone call. The phone call lasted maybe 3-4 minutes. They called and said, his number is up. Do you need supports with washing his clothes and taking him a bath? And he was 8-9 years old. And I'm like, no, I do that for him. So are you sure? Do you need anything right now? And I was like, well, no. We can have somebody go wash his clothes. Well, no, so those things, instead of, the way that it was explained was not in a manner of saying, can we go and show him and help him so that because it's going to take him a lot longer for him to learn that skill. Can we have someone helping, teach?
To do that, yeah. And so I think, that's an interesting lens, right? And so when we think about it, it's why we're all here, to make sure that people know what they have access to. And you're right, it may be years and years down the line, but that's why it's really important to know the importance of getting on that list, and then when your name comes up, that you know, like, so this handy dandy checklist here is really important for that. And Michelle, I'm going to come to you in a second, but I want to just quickly go over the other 3 waivers are the MDCP, or Medically Dependent Children's Program waiver, and then the class, which is Community Living Assistance and Support Services, and then of course DBMD, which is deaf, blind, and multi-disabled. And so that is a much shorter list, the DBMD one, and that's great, but you can see that the others are anywhere from 6 to 14 years. And just want to touch on something real quick. So Marisol, you got on the list when he was 5, which was nice and early, but it took 9 years. And so that's, people will be like, wow, that's great. But the fact of the matter is that was 15 years ago that you got on the list. And so even though he came through in 9 years, I've been working in special needs field here in San Antonio for 27 years. And I do remember when the list was 5, 6, 7, 8 years long. And now it is this big, which is another one of those advocacy pieces that we are trying to change with all of our partners that we work with, to help legislators understand that this is important. So the average waiver is about $51,000 a year is what the benefit is about in the services that somebody gets. But it's $320,000 for institutional care a year. So it's simple math, but people clearly are struggling with this vulnerable population and helping understand that. So Michelle, talk to us a little bit about, especially you're in the school district, right? And you're a mom and your guy is aging. And we've had some of those conversations of when the school bus stops, right? So because you're not always thinking about that down there, like you're still reconciling a diagnosis and still trying to figure that out. So as someone who's a special education advocate and as a mom, how do you help parents to understand? I know it's hard to think about that down there, but the school bus will eventually stop, right? The yellow bus will eventually stop. And how do we help this to resonate with parents who just, and they can't, they're overwhelmed, I know, but it's like, but if you do this one thing.
Yeah, well, and very similar to what Marisol was saying. And I think, you do think, okay, well, it's, especially when you don't have a diagnosis initially, or it's that grieving process where you're thinking, if we hit it hard with ABA or with speech or whatever, it's almost like you're conceding that your child's future is not going to be what you thought it was if you sign him up for this. It's like you're conceding defeat. So it feels a little bit like, if I do this, then I'm saying there is no real future for him. And and people immediately think, oh, I'm never, and I'm Hispanic. So they think, I'm never putting my son in a home. Mijito is going to live with us forever. So, so there's that big piece of it too. I like to tell people, this is like an insurance policy. You take it out and you hope you don't need it because your child will make all of these wonderful improvements and progress, but just in case, it's there and you haven't had to do anything other than, and I tell people right now, spend 45 minutes with me, we'll fill this out. And then you don't have to think about it again, except for every year or every couple of years, when they contact you or when you reach out and you tell, AACOG, yes, I'm still interested in these services for my kid. One of the things that I've sort of been reconciling with this year is my husband and I just turned 50. Wyatt is our youngest, he's 13. And so we didn't get him on the list until, gosh, I guess he was 6.5. So, and even then I did one of them. I didn't realize it was the 2-piece part of it. So I put him on the one and not the other. And so like one of my colleagues, Mary Hillis, said, we don't show that you're on this other one. And I was like, what? I did this. And she was like, nope. So, so he's not been on there, terribly long on that second one, but we are, we did life insurance, you know, probabprobably we're 12 years into our, 20-year insurance policy when they were little. And, the $2 million policy on my husband and the $1 million policy on me, we thought, oh, that's great. Well, that's another thing I didn't understand. Life insurance is great if you die within that, 20-year term. But at this point, at 50, I can't afford $1 million life insurance policy. And it's only going to get more expensive as I get older. So that money goes away. There will be no money to fund a special needs trust for my kiddo. If I don't have some sort of, big life event that gives us all of this windfall. The money that my husband earns now, that's not going to be enough to put it aside. So I try to tell people who may think they're, we're in the same boat. It's like all of those things that you're banking on for providing for your child later, they may not be there. I mean, this time really is a perfect example. My goodness. I mean, I've been thinking about how many people are all of a sudden thinking, I may not have a job. I may not, my 401k or my stocks or my investment in oil, that may be worthless right now. And if I'm banking on all of that stuff right now, that might not be enough. So again, I call it an insurance policy. Just do it,
and it's interesting. And you just said that, Michelle, about oil prices and, it had been part of the challenge for the world, obviously, but especially here in Texas, is that oil is a big part of our economy. Mm-hmm. And it's one of those things I don't think, we've known it when there've been recessions and oil dropped, whatever. But what I try to frame for people in this is that, well, first of all, oil was bottoming out before COVID even started showing up in the United States. So we already were in a position where waivers or us advocating as a collective to have more waiver and interest slots released was already in jeopardy. And then COVID happened, and we've spent tons of money on trying to just keep the economy as buoyant as it can possibly be. So there really is not going to be a lot of money, and we can anticipate if that interest list now, because for better or worse, it really every year, so we take the usual example of 9 years, right? And then that was how many years ago, that it compounds every year that we are not able to advocate for more slots being released. It compounds a year or two. So your wait time, especially in this post-COVID legislative session, I can't imagine for the life of me there'll be slots released. We hope we don't lose slots where slots get taken away. But then we can imagine that by the time we get to the 2023 legislative session, the economy will just be coming out of this spin, and it'll be even more imperative because the list will then be 17 years long, right? So you think about how it's going to compound and why it's ever more important to just put your name on that list and worry about it later, except for to make sure that if you move or change your phone number, you let AACOG or you let HHSC, Health and Human Services, know so that they can continue to contact you. And who knows, by some great miracle of miracles, there could be a lot of money. But again, these are there so that people can remain at home. So Corina, can you talk a little bit about the overall philosophy of what these waivers are and why that's important, especially for you guys as a COG doing service coordination and what you see with families? Because the other thing, not to be a Debbie Downer, but some of our nonprofits that are serving this population might actually close their doors in the future, right? Or they might have to serve less, or you might have to pay more for services, right? So we're saying that if we can come back in the 2021 legislative session and the 2023 legislative session, the waiting list in our LIDA, in our county, roughly is about 6,000 people. But we know there's about 32,000 people with disabilities on the list. So let's make a concerted effort to get more people on the list. So when we go in the 21st and 23rd legislative sessions, we can say, hey, listen, maybe you don't think 6,000 is a big number, but now it's 12,000. So we got to do something about that. So talk a little bit about that from the a quasi-governmental kind of entity that you guys are, Corina, managing it and then trying to advocate and fund it kind of thing.
Yeah, the list is growing so much by the day. I know when I first started here a few years ago, we were at about 2,000 and we're closer to 7,000, Kara.
Oh, good.
So there's a lot of people on here and we're doing more outreach and awareness. So I know when I first came aboard, we were doing maybe 5 outreaches a year. Well, now we're doing at least maybe 10 outreaches a month. So we're getting out there and we're making people aware of these programs. So there's more people coming on every day. And so it is really important to get on these lists because the list is growing. There's more people. It's not more people in need. It's more people are finding out that they do need these services. And so I think it's just really important to get on the list, regardless of a diagnosis or not. It doesn't hurt you to be on the list because by the day, like I said, we're growing. So many people are on there. There was a point when we used to tell people that HCS was about 8 to 10 years, and now we're having to say 15 to 17 years.
Yeah.
And every time that there's not slot releases, that, yeah, you're right, tacks on more time. And so where we're talking to someone last year where we tell them, oh, about this much time, and then we're having to kind of tack on more time, people just don't understand that. So yeah, it's just really important to get on the list.
Well, and respectfully, Corina, I would hate for people to think that that's, and again, there's no blaming, there's no whatever, but this isn't AACOG making those decisions, right? So I want to make it clear that this is money, and that's why the word Medicaid is in it, because it is federal pass-through dollars that come into our state, and then from our state, they go into our LIDIS or our HHSC, and then they funnel down into the families and who's delivering the service. So it's really important that not only do you know about these waivers, you know how to get on the interest list for all of them, and you know when you're to update your information, but to know what is entailed with all of them.
Correct.
That you know that this is a decision that our state is making, and our state made when they decided to not participate in some of the Medicaid changes as a state. And so that's not a political statement, that's just a factual statement. So having this collective voice to make sure that we're all communicating, and I'd like to think that the list went from 2,000 to almost 7,000 because we are all working and talking together a lot more. And we're also working, like I said at the beginning, to strategize and to align our vernacular and the process for how we do this, and not doing finger pointing, but just saying, listen, we need to do this. It's really important. And you should know that like part of Autism Lifeline Links is that when you do enroll, you go on to our website, you click the Register Now button, you do that process, then you will hear from a care coordinator within 24 working hours. They'll make 3 attempts to contact you. They document all those attempts. And then when the care coordinator and you connect, then you would say, well, I'm looking for childcare, I'm looking for education advocacy supports, I'm looking for respite. And then if they're an electronic referral partner, we'll send you over to those agencies. If it's not an electronic referral partner, we'll give you that phone number and that information. And what we hope that we've done is eliminate the fact that instead of you calling 5 different agencies, 3 of them are going to call you, but you still have to call the other 2, right? And then we have this electronic social services record, like an electronic medical record, about where you've been, who have you served, who have you communicated with, so that if you forget stuff later on, you can call our care coordinator or reach out to somebody and say, I never followed through with this, or we used to get services from some agency and I forget what it was. We'd be like, oh, it's SES over at Brighton, and then we'll send a referral back out. And so that's what we're doing in this project, but it also helps to make sure that we're meeting in all these work groups every month to have those conversations so that we can continue to have this aligned. So we're almost at time, but I want to give you each an opportunity to kind of just, what would your last message be about there is some responsibility for the parent or the self-advocate in this And what would your message be to them about the importance of long-term services support waiver programs?
I'll go ahead and start and say that it doesn't hurt to be on the list. Get on the list. Even if you think you might not need it, we can't ever foretell what's going to happen in the future. Maybe your things are great now, but yes, there's loss of jobs. There's things that happen. Life happens, and we don't know what we're going to need 15 years from now. And someone mentioned earlier, Hispanic. Well, Bexar County is very high population of Hispanic people, and we tend to take care of our own until they're adults and live near each other. And oh no, brother or sister's going to help, but you don't know who brother or sister's going to marry. So you're going to services, and you're going to just want to do it because it doesn't hurt to get on the services. The only thing that can come of it is something good. It provides a better quality of life for your loved one. It doesn't hurt to be on it. And when you're offered, if you don't need it, then fine. You don't need it. Go back onto the bottom of the list. You can get back on that list, and let's see what you need 15 years from then. So definitely call us and get
point.
Yeah, really good point.
Yeah.
All right, Michelle?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I think, you hope for the best. You hope that your kiddo won't need it, that they will have made so much progress, that they'll be independent, but it doesn't hurt to sign them up. I also think about, we do tend to think that we can take care of our own, but honestly, that's usually not the best thing for our kids. I mean, I can foresee the day when my son says, I don't want to live with you. Like, I want to do my own thing. And I wouldn't keep my other children from doing that. I wouldn't say, you can't move out, you can't go to college in a different city or state. So why would I do that to Wyatt? So why limit him when I wouldn't do that to my other children?
Michelle, that's a really great point. And it's like part of like the adult listening sessions that we had, this past year, where we brought in self-advocates, 18 years of age and older, and all of you all helped with that. Thank you so much. And it was stuff that we all know, but in the industry, but it was so great to be like, what are your hopes? What are your dreams? What do you want? And guess what? I have the goosebumps right now, and I get emotional just talking about it, because it was just resonating of that. It's like, I want my own apartment. I want a relationship. I want a job. I want to go out with my friends. And it's like, it's all the same stuff. And so we know that our guys are more vulnerable, but it doesn't mean that they are any less capable of having the highest level of independence for themselves, right? And that starts at a very young age. And these programs help them to achieve that. So it kind of goes back to what you said earlier, Marisol, right? Which is like, it's so they can have that and live in their community. So what have you got, Marisol?
Yes, and I think it's the same thing with what they're sharing is just get on the list. Talk to families. We as parents do a really good job about talking to each other and sharing resources. It's every person that goes into our assess program that has a pre-ARD meeting with us, whether they have autism or an intellectual disability or a learning disability, we don't know what is next. So we share it with them. We let them know, if there's something that you want to take out of this meeting, get on the list, get on both of them. As a parent of a child who has been receiving services through, HCS or Texas Home Medicaid Waiver Program, I've, even gotten to the point where he started receiving services and I put him back on the list as well. Yeah. Because at some point, perhaps his needs may change. Mm-hmm. And what if he doesn't need this? So, and we still have, annual meetings with his, coordinators to make sure that all his needs are assessed and treated appropriately. But you can still get on the list, get on a different one. Maybe his needs change and he may no longer need one. Maybe he needs a different one that
because they're going to age too. So maybe they need something that's more medical based and less.
Exactly.
It's the same way we aged. And guess what? When our parents' generation, this population did not live as long, but the life expectancy of somebody with a disability, even a multi-disability, is the same as a neurotypical. So that's not going to change. Their needs are going to change, their wellness, their emotional, all of that. Yeah.
Definitely put them back on the list, even if already receiving services if it gets reassessed, and just share. You know, we share it with all our families. We have it on our office. It's posted. We add it to our folders when we meet a new family, and then as you know, when we attend meetings at the schools, and we do go and talk about transition. You know, schools, you know, do have that information and say, oh, well, you're going to take care of that. Let's talk about it right now. So like that, we take the opportunity to educate everybody in that ARD meeting and let them have plant that little seed that they can also share. And if they don't feel comfortable with explaining the services, do as little as provide them with this sheet. Here's a copy for the school to keep, post it here, and share it with everybody that possibly comes through your ARD meeting, so that they know that this is a service that their child needs to be, you know, waiting on as soon as possible, even, you know, at age 3 when they're just receiving services.
Heck
That's
yeah.
the idea.
Yeah, our campus coordinators in Alamo Heights have really started doing a really good job of doing that. And like I said, you know, when we moved here, Mary Hillis, who's the transition coordinator, she told me, you're not on this one. I was on the state one, but I was not, you know, in with the AACOG. And every time there's an ARD, especially when there's a family, I mean, San Antonio, we're a huge military town, so we've got people coming in all the time. But I get emails, you know, and the teachers, the special ed coordinators will mention it to the families, and then they'll shoot me an email and say, can you please follow up and reach out, you know, to this family and do that. And but I have to say, sometimes it is hard. You know, some people are like, no, I don't need that. And it's like, please, I'm begging you to do nothing else, please.
And I think that's a really good place to kind of wrap and be like, just please, right? Just please do it.
Yes.
We promise you. It's like castor oil. It's like, I know, but it really is good for you, right? Like, it's so yucky, and our spoonful of sugar is all our beautiful faces. And knowing that we're all working together really hard to be advocates for people on the spectrum and all people with developmental disabilities, because even though we're called Autism Lifeline Links, 2/3 of the population on the spectrum have another comorbid disability, or they have siblings who have another disability. And so we're not there just for, none of us are there just for that person with a disability, because anything we do to help support that person with a disability, we're doing for that whole family and that whole family's well-being and wellness. And these waivers are no different in that sense. To the ladies' points who are moms who are thinking of, you know, at some point, A, I'm not going to be around, and B, you know, anything can happen. Like, this is about family planning in every best possible way. And so please do go to Autism Lifeline Links to check out our website. If you're not registered with us and you are on the spectrum, even if it's a secondary or tertiary diagnosis, that is perfectly fine. If your primary diagnosis is Down syndrome or IDD, but autism's in there somewhere, still, we want you to be part of this. And you start the process there. But then know that these are the electronic referral partners. So all of our friends here, AACOG, Down Syndrome Association, Brighton Center, Any Baby Can, Center for Healthcare Services, Respite Care San Antonio, Autism Community Network, Camp, Southwind Fields, Autism Treatment Center, Children's Hospital, San Antonio, the Autism Clinic there, the ARC of San Antonio, and Disability SA. And all of those guys are there also to make sure that we are communicating and having those conversations with you about getting on the waiver and interest list as well in the long-term services and supports. The other thing I just want to let people know is that here is our autism resources. And if you go and click there, we have translated the community resource guide, which is a combination of Any Baby Can's resource guide, Autism Lifeline Links resource guides, Brighton's resource guide, Autism Community Network's resource guide, the ARC's resource guide, put it all in one place. And we've also translated it into Spanish. And there's also the Kerr County and the New Braunfels resource guides, courtesy of Any Baby Can. And in here, you can scroll through and just say that you are looking for general assistance or community assistance. You can click this and it'll take you right to that page. And then you can also click on these and they'll hyperlink you to those agencies. You can also find state health services, AACOG, all of those other resources that you should be doing, and other advocacy pieces. So please do go and check out that. I want to thank Corina from AACOG and Michelle from Alamo Heights ISD and a mom, and Marisol from Brighton Center and a mom, for being with us today and helping on this community collaborative to make sure that we really are creating the best city and the best community we can for our people with special needs and our families who care and love for them.
Yes.
Well, I want to thank you all very much. And
Thank
I'm
you.
going to, we're going to shut down our video. We're going to stop that taping.
Thank you.
And thank you guys very much and end this meeting.
Everyone
you
be
so
safe.
Bye
Yes,
guys. Yeah, be
everyone.
safe.